The diner was nearly empty that Tuesday afternoon when the little boy at table 7 caught Marco's attention, not because he was making noise, quite the opposite. The child sat rigid in his seat, hands folded too neatly on the vinyl tabletop, eyes fixed downward while the man across from him scrolled through his phone with obvious irritation. Something about the scene made Marco's instincts flare, the same instincts that had kept him alive through 2 tours in Afghanistan and 15 years riding with the Hells Angels. Marco Reaper. Sullivan didn't look like someone you'd trust with your darkest secrets. Standing 6'4" with a beard that reached his chest, arms covered in tattoos that told stories most people wouldn't want to hear, and wearing his leather vest adorned with patches that made suburban mothers grab their children a little tighter. He was the definition of intimidating. But those who knew him understood that beneath the hardened exterior beat the heart of a man who'd seen too much, suffering to ignore it when it crossed his path. He'd stopped at Betty's Diner on Route 9 for nothing more than coffee and a moment's peace before heading to the motorcycle rally 2 towns over. The place smelled like grease and burnt coffee, exactly the kind of no-frills establishment where bikers and truckers could exist without judgment. But now, watching that little boy from the corner of his eye, peace was the last thing on Marco's mind. The child couldn't have been more than 7 years old, with shaggy brown hair that looked like it hadn't been washed, in days and clothes that hung loose on his small frame. When Betty, the 60-something waitress who'd run this place since the Reagan administration, approached their table, the boy didn't order. The man did all the talking, his voice sharp and dismissive. The boy just nodded, never lifting his gaze. Marco had seen fear before. He'd seen it in the eyes of soldiers under fire, in the faces of abuse victims. His motorcycle club had helped rescue through their community outreach programs. In the mirror, during his own darkest days after coming home from war, this boy wore fear like a second skin. Then it happened, so quick that anyone not paying attention would have missed it. As Betty walked away, the boy's hand moved to his hair, fingers tugging 3 times in rapid succession. Then his hand dropped to scratch his nose, but it wasn't a casual gesture. It was deliberate, purposeful. The boy's eyes flickered toward Betty, then to Marco, holding his gaze for just a heartbeat before looking away. Marco's blood ran cold. He knew that signal. He'd seen it in the training videos his club had started showing, at their monthly meetings, part of their initiative to help identify trafficking victims and children in danger. The organization they partnered with had taught them the signs, the silent pleas that kids made when they couldn't speak the words aloud. His hands tightened around his coffee mug. Every fiber of his being wanted to storm over to that table, but years of military training and hard-won wisdom held him back. Rushing in could make things worse. The man could bolt with the boy. Violence could erupt. The child could get hurt. Marco pulled out his phone, keeping his movements casual, and texted his riding buddy Snake, who was waiting outside with their bikes. "Need you inside, quietly, possible situation." Then he caught Betty's eye and gestured for her to come over. Betty had been serving people long enough to read a room like a book. She approached his table with a fresh pot of coffee, her movements unhurried but her eyes sharp. "What's wrong, honey?" "The boy at table 7, Marco said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Watch him. And that man he's with. Something's not right. I think the kid signaled for help." Betty's face remained neutral, but her hand trembled slightly as she poured coffee into Marco's mug. "I'll call Chief Harris. He usually grabs lunch about now anyway." "Good. Don't make it obvious. And keep them here if you can." Snake walked in moments later, all wiry muscle and nervous energy, his eyes immediately finding Marco's. They'd ridden together for 8 years, served in the same unit overseas before that. Words weren't always necessary. Snake took a seat at the counter, positioning himself between the door and table 7. The man at the table signaled for the check. The boy's shoulders tensed even more, if that was possible. Marco watched as the child's hand moved again. The same signal, more urgent this time. The desperation in that small gesture made Marco's chest constrict. Betty took her time bringing the check over, chatting about the weather, asking questions about where they were headed. The man's irritation grew visible, his jaw clenching. "Just the check, please." Of course. "And how about a slice of pie for the road? On the house. Got fresh apple this morning." Betty's smile was warm, but her positioning was strategic. blocking the most direct path to the door. "We're fine." The check. The boy's eyes were welling with tears now, though he kept his head down. His small hands gripped the edge of the table so hard his knuckles turned white. That's when Chief Tom Harris walked through the door, technically off-duty in his civilian clothes, but carrying an authority that was impossible to miss. He was a large man himself, nearly Marco's size, with 30 years of police work behind him and a reputation for being fair but firm. His eyes swept the diner, catching Marco's barely perceptible nod toward table 7. Tom approached casually, stopping by Marco's table first. "Reaper, good to see you. Heard you boys are heading to the rally." "That's the plan, Chief." Marco's voice was steady, but his eyes directed Tom's attention across the diner. Tom understood. He wandered over to table 7 with the easy confidence of someone just making friendly small talk. "Afternoon, folks. Don't believe I've seen you around here before. Just passing through?" The man's face hardened. "Is there a problem, officer?" "Not an officer today, just a concerned citizen. Making sure everyone's doing all right?" Tom's eyes landed on the boy. "What's your name, son?" The boy's mouth opened, but the man cut him off. "He's fine. We need to go." "I'd like to hear from him," Tom said, his voice taking on an edge. The friendly demeanor was slipping, revealing the lawman underneath. The boy looked up then, really looked up. And what Marco saw in those eyes nearly broke him. Terror, hope, desperation, all at once. The child's lips formed words so quiet Marco almost missed them. "Help me." Everything happened quickly after that. Tom's hand moved to the radio on his belt, calling for backup. The man at the table shot to his feet, reaching for the boy, but Marco was faster. Years of training kicked in as he crossed the diner in 3 strides, putting himself between the man and the child. Snake moved simultaneously, blocking the exit. "Don't make this worse," Marco said, his voice deadly calm. He didn't touch the man, didn't threaten him, just stood there like an immovable wall of muscle and leather. The man looked at Marco, at Snake, at Chief Harris, and must have calculated his odds. His shoulders slumped. Within minutes, 2 patrol cars arrived, and officers were leading the man away in handcuffs while reading him his rights. The boy stood in the middle of the diner, shaking like a leaf. Marco knelt down slowly, making himself smaller, less threatening. "Hey, buddy, you're safe now. You did so good. You were so brave." The child collapsed into Marco's arms, sobbing. This hardened biker, this man who'd faced enemy fire and bar fights and all manner of chaos, held this fragile little boy and felt tears streaming down his own face. Betty brought over hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. Tom sat down with them, gentle and patient, asking questions while a social worker was called. The boy's name was Tyler. He'd been missing from a shopping mall 3 states away for 6 days. His mother had been frantically searching, her face plastered on every news channel. The man who'd taken him had been moving constantly, never staying anywhere long enough to be caught. Until today, until a scared little boy remembered something his mother had taught him about, the signal for help, until he was brave enough to try it, until someone noticed and cared enough to act. As the sun set and Tyler was reunited, with his mother in a tearful scene, outside the diner, Marco stood by his motorcycle watching. The woman had hugged him so hard he could barely breathe, thanking him over and over through her tears. She'd looked at his patches, his tattoos, his rough appearance, and seen past all of it to the man who'd helped save her son. Snake clapped him on the shoulder. "Ready to head to the rally?" Marco looked back at the diner, at Tyler holding his mother's hand, at the life that little boy would get to live now. "Yeah, let's ride." As they thundered down Route 9, the setting sun painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Marco thought about how people saw him, saw all of them in their leather and patches. They saw danger, they saw trouble, they saw people to fear. They didn't see the veterans who checked on elderly neighbors, the riders who organized toy drives for hospitalized children, the men and women who'd walk through fire for someone in need. That little boy hadn't seen the scary biker. He'd seen a protector. And in that moment when it mattered most, he'd taken a chance that someone was paying attention. Sometimes angels wear leather jackets instead of wings. Sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. And sometimes the biggest hearts beat in the chests of those the world has judged too quickly. Tyler was home, and that was all that mattered.